Well, welcome to Prophetic Table Talk, and what a fun time to be alive. It is totally awesome. It's what all is going on in the world, and that we get to be a part of it. And it's pages and pages, but it is exciting. So we want to start out with updates of what all is going on, and we want to take a look at this. So, Connie, if you'll start out.
Okay, I do want to make mention that gold, Shane was just telling us what the price for gold is. It's at $5,100 an
Yep,
ounce, and silver is 108, $108.
correct. We're bumping
Okay.
5,100 on gold literally as we speak. So I feel by the time we get through with the first page of updates, we'll probably be there as fast as we're moving. Because
That's
we're
incredible.
a few hours ago, we opened at $4,981, and we're bumping 5,100 already.
Wow. So that reminds me, did we hear of anything from last week when that big crash happened?
Actually, kind of interesting. A couple of the private X groups have mentioned that a lot of that manipulation was either coming out of Eastern Europe, and so that's who they're blaming as one of the countries in Eastern Europe. Um, and then, funny enough, we had a hint of a possibility of an involvement with Canada because,
Mm.
see, gold and silver going up is great. It fulfills a prophetic word, but it weakens the U.S. dollar faster than what we can handle. And so we had this little thing come up that possibly Canada was involved somehow, some way. And then I don't know if you guys saw today, but Canada has signed agreements and deals with China,
Oh,
and they're basically kicking the US out of Canada.
uh-oh.
That's a big move.
And so they have signed an agreement and a trade agreement and a pact and everything with China, and they're going to do, instead of buying their automobiles from the US industries, they're going to be purchasing all of their automobiles going forward from China.
Wow. Wow.
So this is going to be, so for that drive up on gold and silver, and we still never filled that gap. So we still never equalized on the market value.
Mm-hmm.
Then from that huge, enormous drive up to all of a sudden Eastern Europe and possibly Canada being involved, and then we see Canada making huge moves this week.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of concerning. It's big enough that Trump has actually posted about it on Truth Social,
Okay.
and he believes this is going to be the end of Canada as we know it.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
And
So
so,
news, we can plan the show one day and then come back the next day, and news is going so fast.
It
yes,
is.
it is. It really is.
So how would you tie or could you tie that in with what we were talking about as far as the money goes with the big dive in crypto that happened today?
Yeah, that's another market manipulation with the diving crypto. If you pay attention, the focus in the crypto market, and if you follow some of the larger crypto channels on X, what you will see is they are continually posting the update value of the U.S. Department of Treasury and U.S. government held cryptocurrency wallet and how much it's decreasing in value. So
Mm.
if last week, the last Sunday, what did we talk about? A huge market manipulation on gold and silver.
We
This
did.
Sunday, huge market manipulation on cryptocurrency.
Right. Mm-hmm.
In fact, we had some clients that were wanting to get into some of the cryptocurrencies like the XRPs and things like that. And I've been holding off on letting them actually buy in because where they were wanting to buy in was $2.20 and $2.30 and $2.10 on XRP. And here we are tonight, it's $1.80.
Wow.
So you're talking about a huge percentage drop, but I had already marked that out and already let them know we're not going to even consider it until we're at $1.70. And even then, we're
Hmm.
going to the floor before we even consider moving forward with XRP. So for anybody watching, there's a bit of of free advice on how do you buy in and where's your entry point with XRP. And right now, I'm looking at that 172 to 176 level and hoping that that's going to be support. If not, we're going to 150.
Wow.
Uh, and that's literally, and that's coming from someone who's had XRP since it was 31 cents.
Oh my
So,
goodness. Wow. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Well, the Wall Street executives are warning Trump, hey, you better stop attacking the Fed and the credit card industry.
mm,
Wall Street's relationship with the Trump administration seems to be a little bit souring.
mm, it is.
And then,
And
yeah.
rightfully so, because I mean, with all the crypto market and everything, it's basically what he's coming against, is what he's attacking.
Hmm.
And he's forcing legislation through this, basically taking the power away from Wall Street.
Yeah. Interesting to watch.
Hmm.
So there's some new financial disclosures that were filed by Attorney General Pam Bondi, raising major conflict of interest concerns about her relationship with Pfizer, which was involved in 5 recent Department of Justice investigations. Probably not going to be quite favorable for her. And then on the 18th, the Pentagon ordered about 1,500 active duty soldiers to be ready in case of a possible deployment to Minnesota. Now, this was back on the 18th, where federal authorities had been conducting a massive immigration enforcement operation. And then also, we had an anti-ICE protester disrupt the Sunday service at City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, actually halting the service during the worship and confronting the congregants. The videos showed demonstrators shouting "ICE out," refusing to leave, and accusing one of the church's pastors also of serving as an ICE field office director. Y'all chime in when you have something. The
Okay,
Department of, go ahead.
Shane, did you see the message I posted out there? So hold on, folks. We're just interrupting the show to work on a problem with broadcasting.
There you go. It's actually the because of the storm and the weather and the wind right now that we're having here. I apologize.
So what happened? You got it fixed?
Well, until the next gust of wind, yes.
Okay, until the next gust of wind. Do we need to back up, Connie, and let's redo some of this, or what do you think, Shane?
I think we're good.
You think we're good? Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead, Connie.
Okay. On the 20th, the Trump administration Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services says that up to 1.8 billion in federal Medicaid funds were improperly spent on health care for illegal immigrants, far beyond what federal law requires. And of course, this was in California. They've been identified as the largest offender, withholding nearly 300 million pending compliance verifications.
You know, I will tell you this about all the money that's being sent out to all these immigrants and illegal immigrants as well.
Hmm.
It's kind of interesting because I had something that was pointed out to me that was um, it was basically, as an American citizen, if I took a house and said, you know what, I'm going to put a daycare right here in this house, and I'm going to file the paperwork, and I want to put in a daycare. Do you know the number of hoops that you have to jump through as an American citizen to get approved to put in a daycare
Mm.
is astronomical. It'll take you months and even possibly years to get approved.
Wow.
Much less the fact that if you want to get funding for your daycare, you have to put up a minimum of 20 up to 50% deposit of the money that it's going to take to open that daycare as an American citizen. But if you're not a citizen and if you're an illegal immigrant, it's free.
What?
Yes, you're 100% grant funded, you're 100% government funded, and it doesn't cost you anything to set it up. And so, and it's the same way with the SBA Small Business Administration.
Hmm.
If you want to start a small business, like for instance, you want to go buy a gas station, whatever that gas station costs, let's say $1 million, you're going to have to put up $200,000. And then, yes, you can get the financing after you're going through all the paperwork approval. You have to show car counts that are passing in front of the gas station. The car counts have to meet a specific average. You have to go through all the
Wow.
hoops. But if you're an illegal immigrant or an immigrant that's only here on a 2-year visa or even a year-to-year renewal visa, you get 100% financing and no money down. And basically, they walk you through the door and give you your approval, and you're good to go. They don't base anything off of credit scores, anything like that. But if you're a citizen, it does not work like that.
Wow.
And nobody can tell me that that is not intentional,
Hmm.
that it's intentionally set up the system from CMS, Medicare, Medicaid, everything. You can't tell me that that system is absolutely not set up intentionally that way in order to work against Americans.
Wow. That's crazy, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I actually went to purchase a business one time, thought I was going to go through the SBA, and found out that I was not approved because I was an American citizen. Literally.
Makes no sense. Makes no
And
sense.
then 6 months later, a gentleman from India was approved 100% financed to do to buy the exact same business that I was trying to buy. So I'm not just telling you that from hearsay, I'm telling you that from personal experience.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he only has a 2-year visa, a temporary 2-year visa, and he was approved 100% financing.
Wow. Wow. Well, Elon Musk has made his largest single Senate race donation ever, contributing 10 million to the Fight for Kentucky super PAC backing Nate Morris in the state's Republican primary. So he's really come back out, hasn't he, Elon Musk?
Yes, he has. Um, he's coming back for round two, it seems like, and I'm not sure what his intentions are this time, but I promise you, he got enough exposure the first time that he knows what he's looking for this time.
Hmm.
So for him going for the Senate race in Kentucky, then that tells me that he's looking for he knows where the power is sitting.
Yes, and he's
Okay.
after Mitch McConnell's old seat is what they're going after. So he put a lot of money into Mitch McConnell's seat because this is what, and this is a businessman. Um, the Republicans have held this seat since 1992, but Mitch McConnell is really not Republican. He is a joke for a Republican. But also, this Nate Morris that he's investing in has been on Don Jr.'s podcast. And so he even made his announcement from Don Jr.'s podcast.
Wow.
So they've actually got a stake. He's going after this stake and getting a different type of person in Mitch McConnell's seat.
Hmm. All right. And we've talked about redrawing congressional lines. Well, Democratic leaders in Maryland and Virginia are actually moving aggressively to redraw their congressional maps mid-decade. a step that could wipe out remaining Republican seats and reshape the House in 2026.
That is a possibility. That's what we've been warning people about. Is as of right now, the Republicans do not have the upper hand
Mm-hmm.
coming into 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Period. We just don't. And a lot of that has to do with the way the media is portraying everything. And if you scroll through social media, what you start finding is there are a lot of, I don't want to call it just fake accounts, but they're dummy accounts, okay? And these accounts are actually pushing a mind control initiative because they're posting questions that make you stop and think for a second, but they're leading questions. In other words, and they're conformative questions. So they're trying to force you to answer the question from their viewpoint. And that has went from seeing 8 or 10 a day across social media to now I would say roughly in the hundreds that you're seeing daily. So they're
Wow.
attacking on all fronts in order to kind of use that mind control narrative in
Mm-hmm.
order to shift people's perspectives.
And that's what we're going to battle for right now, is what you believe. And a lot of times we have to go back and look at our own foundation. I mean, we do, because sometimes our foundation makes up what we believe. Well, it does. It is all the time. Most of the time, your perception is formed in your nonverbal years. So what you feel safe in, what you don't feel safe in. And this is what they're working to appeal. They know most people came from broken homes in our society now, or where parents didn't get along, all of the above. So they can fill your mind with unsafe issues. And so here, this is the foundation of your perspective. You need to watch what they're doing to you.
Hmm. Well, FBI Director Kash Patel has announced that federal agencies have executed executed 67,000 arrests since January 20th of 2025, marking nearly a 200% increase year over year. Now, this
What
go ahead.
that's on top of what that's not even considering and counting what the ICE arrest of illegal
Mm-hmm.
immigrants. That's strictly
Mm-hmm.
FBI guys. So let's,
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about Cash Patel and FBI, I don't want people to, think, well, that's the illegal immigrants that have committed crimes and so on and so forth. Um, I think just out of the four states in the South, the ICE arrest top 150,000.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And they still need to come looking down south.
They
Hmm.
are. But here's the difference: is the reason it's not higher than 150,000 is if you pay attention to the construction industries and things like that the Democrats are trying to quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote protect.
That's right.
Um, they are not going after construction sites unless the illegals that are there have actually committed crimes. That is the one unique thing, is they are not going after every single construction site. They're going after specific people, and there are a lot of other people getting caught in the mix, yes,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not just going after every construction site.
Hmm.
Or else, if they were, the number would be significantly higher than that right now. But
Yeah. Yeah.
what Kash Patel is doing is he's actually closing FBI cases that have been left open.
That's true.
That's what a lot of people don't realize. This is not new cases. These are cases where these people have been found guilty and they've been let walk free by the
That's
Biden
true.
administration.
And just recently, the Wedding is his last name, that he, terrorist narco trader, once was an Olympic star. He just arrested him last week out of Mexico City. And he was let go for years and years and years.
Wow.
His last name is Wedding. I'm not talking about a wedding like a marriage. His last name is Wedding. So that he's going after these cases of criminals. And the Bible clearly says if we don't take care of criminals, you can look it up, it will be overlooked and people will think it's okay.
Hmm. All right, we have a CNN guest apologizing after falsely claiming that Trump was part of a human sex trafficking network. Gun control activist Cameron Paskey said he made the statement accidentally in a seemingly sarcastic post.
That's a lot to say accidentally. That's all I've got to say about that. I looked that up, but to hear what he said, but still, that's a lot to say accidentally.
All right. And Putin is planning to or preparing to transfer $1 billion from Russian assets frozen in the U.S. to U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace. That's a lot of money.
That's a strategic move on Putin's part. He doesn't want his money frozen. He wants it unfrozen, and he wants to tell where it goes to. So he's going to use that as his bargaining power and to get his money unfrozen where he can tell what it goes to.
Mm-hmm.
And that way,
That, and at the same time, it's to keep your friends close and your enemies closer,
that's
all at
true.
the same time.
That's true. And I understand it was frozen concerning the Ukraine war in Russia.
Correct.
Anyway.
Okay. And on January the 22nd, the United States has formally completed its withdrawal from the World Health Organization, ending 77 years of membership. Wow.
It's about time.
And then White House spokesman Carolyn Leavitt stated that all options are on the table, including military action in order to acquire the Arctic territory. Now, Trump has threatened tariffs on European countries that opposed the U.S. annexation of Greenland. We are going after that hot and heavy, aren't we?
Yes, we are, because currently, in relation to talking about Russia, we only have one spot in which the United States of America can actually detect Russian um, Marine Force movement as far as submarine ships and so on and so forth. And that one spot is in Scotland.
Yeah,
And they don't
that's
want us. And we only have one spot. In fact, we lost two. We lost track of two different Russian nuclear submarines that were headed to the U.S. because we don't have any eyes anywhere else in that entire Arctic region.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of reasons behind Greenland, and that is definitely one of them. It is security, and people are saying that Trump is saying, "Oh, he's just claiming security, but he actually wants the minerals." But in reality, it is security as well, because we are losing track of Russian movement when it comes to our east coast. And then when they do pop up on the east coast radars, it's too late.
Yeah.
So we need to quit trying to pin it on one reason. There is a list of things that Trump is after in Greenland, not just one thing.
And we also found out that the number of civilians killed in Iran's crackdown on protests may be more than 20,000. The UN Special Reporter on Human Rights in Iran said, citing reports from doctors inside the country. And then
But
after
now
Trump
remember,
returned,
the regime that's doing all the killing is the same regime that all the leftists support and the Democrats support. So don't forget that.
yeah. And as Trump made his way back from Davos, he celebrated his 21st wedding anniversary. And then President Trump rescinded an invitation for Canada to join his newly formed Board of Peace amid his escalating feud with the Canada's PM Mark Carney. Can you kind of talk about that just a little bit already with this
Yes, we have. The fact that Canada
ensuing
actually signed
battle?
a contract with China and
Uh-huh.
basically kicked the US out of their trade agreement, and now their trade agreement stands with China as of today. So that being said, um, yeah, China's going to be literally at our doorsteps at a place we don't have a wall, at a
Mm,
border that where if you go to the US Canadian border, especially your northern states like your North Dakotas and
right.
all along
Mhm.
that line,
Right.
you will have people that will be in their front door of their house is in the US and the back door is in Canada and vice versa. And it's very interesting. So there's no actual hard line for them not to cross.
It's going to be an interesting. We imagine we'll be building a wall between us and Canada.
That's what I'm saying. The likelihood of that is very, very slim because of the way the lands are laid out. The lands were laid out before a lot of the lands and the land ownerships and that's been inherited and passed down and sold and so on and so forth. It was before lines were drawn,
Mm,
before these hard lines were drawn. So when you're looking at literally, I'm telling you, there are people that their front yard is in the US and their backyard is in Canada. You would have to build a wall through their bedroom and their kitchen. So they know what China knows what they're doing.
Hmm.
They're getting a foothold.
so do you anticipate maybe like if you were traveling from US to Canada, like would it be a lot stricter customs? Do you think they would have border patrol lined up along the lines, or how do you think this may play out?
I'm not exactly certain because I mean, look at it geographically. Look at the line between the U.S. and Mexico and in relation to the line between the U.S. and Canada, the U.S. and Mexico line is nothing in comparison to the line between U.S. and Canada.
Hmm.
That line between the U.S. and Canada is enormous. It's thousands and thousands of miles.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm not sure exactly how they would handle that. That would be a feat to have to figure out even how to handle that.
right, right. Mm. All right. Well, Norway has taken the unprecedented step of urging its citizens to prepare for potential wartime scenarios, marking a significant shift in the Nordic nation approach to civil defense. Now, the Norwegian government has distributed updated guidance to households across the country, advising them to maintain emergency supplies that could sustain them for at least a week without external support. Now, this directive represents the most serious civil preparedness campaign since the Cold War era and reflects growing concerns about the regional security in Northern Europe. And then we have federal authorities arresting several activists following the disruption of a Sunday
Hmm.
worship service at City's Church in St. Paul. I think I already said that. This protest targeted a pastor believed to have had a leadership role with ICE. I think we already talked about that. And then
Yeah,
the U.S. House
but I
passed.
know for a fact that the local police force is actually actively training church members how to safeguard the churches, and they're actively training them for those type of occurrences. So
Okay.
it's kind of interesting. They're training them how to use weapons. They're training them um, how to manage who to shoot, who not to shoot, who is considered a threat, who's not considered a threat. I mean, it's that serious.
But I also understand it was yesterday or maybe the day before that a rioter in Minnesota bit off the tip of a finger of an ICE agent.
It's
And
correct.
that's correct. I mean, it's
That is
like
correct.
Minnesota has gone absolutely crazy, showing what is filled up with and the mindset is filled up with. So we have the church. Why are they attacking the Christian churches in a the church. And by the way, they went in the church shouting, "Ice, ice."
Yeah, the ice out
Yeah,
thing.
with
Yeah,
the ice, yes.
yeah.
Mm. All right, so the U.S. House passed a $64.4 billion funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security on January the 22nd in a narrow 220 to 207 vote. Now, this measure includes roughly $10 billion for ICE, keeping funding flat amid intense controversy over enforcement operations. Then we've got the House Oversight Committee voted January 21st to advance contempt of Congress resolutions against the Clintons.
And it's time to advance it.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely is. He was impeached twice, and they're wanting to impeach President Trump to put him out of office. They impeached Clinton twice and did not put him out of office.
Right, right.
Ooh, why does Clinton get such privileges?
Has something to do with Walmart, I'm sure.
I'm sure some other stuff too. Call Jeffrey Epstein.
All right, and then on the 23rd, President Trump said an armada of U.S. warships is headed toward the Middle East as he continues to watch the Iranian regime's response to massive protests that began in late December. He said, "We have a lot of ships going that direction just in case." And when he was asked by reporters on Air Force One where things stood with Iran, he said it was a good sign that Iran had decided not to hang protesters, adding that we have an armada heading that direction. Maybe we won't have to use it.
That's some deep thought there.
Hmm. And the U.S. is considering a complete withdrawal of military troops from Syria, which is a move that would end U.S. military involvement in Syria, which began in 2014
Mm-hmm.
as an intervention in the Syrian civil war ordered by Barack Obama. And speaking of that, you had mentioned something, Ruth Ann, about Obama.
Yeah. This week there was a House White House briefing between Caroline Leavitt and Tulsi Gabbard on Wednesday. Actually, Secretary Tulsi Gabbard accused former President Barack Obama of deliberating an effort to bring about Russiagate and take away the election from Donald Trump. They alleged Obama pushed a false narrative of the Russian interference and weaponized intelligence agencies to undermine Trump. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard released a report earlier claiming key intelligence was manipulated under Obama's direction, calling it a treason conspiracy. So they have come out in the White House at the press conference on Wednesday and have declared Obama part of a treason conspiracy. So with the Clintons being out there now and Obama's out there, and really sometimes this is like stepping back in your generations and taking care of something that is honing you, that won't let go. And this is definitely something that's honing our country. When I say honing, it's like it's there, it's following, just like something follows your generational patterns. Well, stolen elections have become a thing in our country, and we have to do something. It would be interesting how many politicians we get. Now, Obama's name's out there with the Clinton treason conspiracy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Any other
And
comment?
so, yeah, not, there's so many more could be added to that treason list.
Yes.
And then we also have another incident with ICE going on at the St. Paul International Airport on the 23rd. And they were making a comment that once protests interfere with airports, You've got enforcement decisions that move quickly. Symbolic space ends and operational consequences begin. I'm sure that is a pretty big deal at an
Mhm.
airport, all the security and everything. And then going back kind of to the topic of money, the U.S. Treasury Department and the U.S. Mint have circulated some draft designs for a proposal for a special $1 coin that would mark the 250th anniversary of our American independence next year, 2026, featuring the image of President Trump. I'd
Well,
be curious to know, just kind of like silver and gold are escalating in price, if this $1 coin might have that potential.
It might have that potential, and you notice it's a coin and not a dollar bill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because technically the only legal tender um, in America is actually the printing that is done and approved by Congress themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
coinage is the only thing that the American government actually mints and prints is coinage, not dollars. That's Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
So
interesting.
it's specifically going after coins.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that to be kind of interesting. It kind of stood out to me that it was
Mm-hmm.
coins.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And talking about the economics and things like that, you guys know we had the everything that went on in Davos this past week. Um, I think it's interesting to point out the fact that Jamie Dimon actually had a lot to say, to the point that the people that were heading up the conference tried to get him to shut up. Like they were trying to cut his mic, but they knew they couldn't, because if they did, they would suffer greatly for it. But one of the things he said to the elites that were in the room is he said, I've been coming to Davos all these years and listen to chatter and stuff like that, and you don't do a particularly good job of making the world a better place. He also mentioned that he is a globalist. He is absolutely for what Trump is doing with Make America Great, as long as he doesn't make America alone. And he put his 2 cents in about the fact that basically the European Union and Europe need to retain a certain level of control over what the U.S. is doing.
Wow.
So I just thought I would throw that out there for you guys to interpret it as you hear it, and then you guys can interpret it from there the way you think it needs to be interpreted. But um, it's been interpreted quite a few different ways. So I'll just leave it at that. So I'll leave that open for interpretation.
Yeah, if
Interesting.
anybody's got an interpretation, you can post it out here. We'll see what channels say what he thinks. We will take questions.
That's
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
definitely.
And so we've got the White House is hoping that cooler heads will prevail as Democrats begin pulling their support for the funding measure for the Department of Homeland Security, threatening to derail efforts to avert a partial government shutdown again.
Yeah, that's like January the 30th, right? They're wanting to shut down the government again. Maybe it's a good thing.
So we'll see.
We'll see.
Hmm. That's really all we
And if
have
they
as
shut
far as,
down the
wait, that's all
government
we have to
again,
say.
then we're all we're going to do on our end is unwrap the investments in S&P and Nasdaq and Dow Jones and wrap it up in silver and gold and let it continue running higher.
That's
Just that
good.
simple.
Wow.
Okay, didn't we have something about Pam Bondi before we stop updates? Connie, did you have something about Pam
Oh,
Bondi?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Do not.
Okay. Okay. Well, we will start with Bo Pomey and David Rodriguez. Okay. Now, what we're going to talk about, if you've heard the Julie Green prophecy, and it's worth going to listen to and deciphering it, we're going to talk about it where Bo Pomey and David Rodriguez talked about it. So basically, Bo Pomey brought this up, and this was actually the day after she gave the prophecy. So this is what Julie Green said. It's time for you to know who the great white wolf really is. It's time to expose. And if you look at Bo Pomey's timelines, he says we're in a time of exposure. So Obama's being exposed, the Clintons are being exposed. So we're in a time of exposure. Well, let's see what this is. It's time to stand and pray. Let's see. It's time to expose. It's time to stand and pray against him and who is working with and what his assignments are against this country. And then she said, J.D. Vance is the great white wolf. The deep state put him next to President Trump because the plan was for President Trump not to make his full second term. And when he didn't, they would have their guy to take his place. Now, that's a big statement
That's
to make.
huge.
It is a huge statement. And I know she had to really, to put it out publicly like she did. She's putting a lot of things of her ministry, and you can have your own opinion about Julie Green, but to put out a statement like that, you're putting a lot of your ministry on the line, because people are going to really get their opinion according to their perception. Again, some people are taught you don't say anything about anybody, you just let them do whatever they're going to do. And so basically she put out a lot, but I did a little bit of investigation, and I started some investigation into Barbie Breathitt was the first place I started. And I wanted to know what Barbie and how Barbie saw a great white wolf. And so I used her books on dream and prophetic interpretation. So basically, she says animals in a dream represent people, spirits, or spiritual assignments. Okay. But she goes on to talk about a wolf is often, if you are dream about a wolf, it is somebody in predatory authority. It's a predator against you that has authority over you. And the Bible tells us in Matthew 7:15, according to Barbie's book, watch out for wolves in sheep's clothing. So the key part of the discernment here is don't fear. When you get warnings like this, you investigate, you go before the Father and see what the Father's saying, what the Lord Jesus has to say. But white, actually, according to Barbie, represents righteousness, purity, heaven's authority, and truth. But white can also mean exposure. The opposite side in Barbie's teachings to all of these good things is exposure. So white does mean exposure. Something is hidden that is being revealed. Okay. Great means a national or high level authority that indicates governmental, apostolic, or territorial influence. Okay, so not a low level, but a very high level. Okay, just depending on what this is. So basically, when you put this together, there is a warning with a wolf, a predator. Okay, exposure, and then someone on great authority. That's the great white wolf. But I also realized that the great white wolf was important to Native Americans. So they were considered rare and sacred, carrying authority. They believed that the white wolf carried a lot of authority. They would often refer to them as messengers between the physical and the spiritual world. I find that very interesting. Okay. And wolves often symbolize covenant in the Native American realm. So it's very interesting now that Julie has come out saying that she's warning, okay, about the great white wolf. Okay. So basically, stay calm, get into prayer, and see what the Lord says. it would be very interesting, and ask what's going on. But he goes on to say that March the 3rd is important. March the 3rd is Purim. You know, that saying that people say when you were born for such a time as this comes out of the book of Esther. Okay. The book of Esther specifically calls what happened with Esther and sets everything up. And then Haman ends up getting hung on his own gallows because he wanted to deceive the king. Now, to me, it is very interesting that we have the great white wolf prophecy. We are entering into the time of Purim and Esther. And what else do I need to say? And Haman. So, is it a time to expose a Haman? I don't know. But Haman was out to destroy Mordecai. So Haman ends up on his own gallows. He is so interesting, Bo says, that this could tie in with the J.D. Vance thing we just played earlier because they played Julie's clip. This could actually relate to a Haman moment. So the point as I'm making here is that prophecy is true. And wouldn't that be fascinating that a Haman was at the right hand of our leader or our king, as he said? Does anybody want to comment on this? It's open for comments now. It's open for anybody that wants to post a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody wants to post a comment. I'm not particularly a fan of JD Vance. So, not against him in any way, shape, form, or fashion. He's done a lot. Um, from where he came from to where he is absolutely extraordinary, yes. But I'm just not particularly a fan. Something about him doesn't quite sit right with me, and it hasn't since the get-go.
Hmm.
Well,
I remember you talking about that.
there are things to look at, okay? And there's historical things that you could really spend a lot of time looking into about when something happened to a president, the vice president after them changed the direction that the president was going. And that is something that you really, I mean, when you get a power lineup like this and you think, well, Trump chose him, I realize that Trump was influenced by Don Jr. to choose him, okay? And there again, this goes into looking at the perception of people and their formation and their foundation of their perception. Um, could be. Okay. And I just say that. I'm just giving you some things that maybe you need to consider in your prayer time and ask God for what God wants. And really, we don't need a president to anything to happen to our president. He needs to complete his term. If you look historically, Andrew Johnson took the nation in a total different direction after Lincoln because the entire plan was to restore the South, and they did not restore the South. Congress voted not to under Andrew Johnson's leadership. So there was many things, and you can look this up historically. Don't send me cards and letters unless you've looked it up. Well, I mean, whatever you send nowadays. But anyway, look it up. It's really true, but that's not the only case. That's just one of the many cases that the country got turned in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I think a Trump Rubio card would be better.
Well, J.D. Vance, is young,
Mhm.
very young, probably has some things to overcome in his youth. And we'll just leave it at that unless somebody else wants to post something. Well, so also, excuse me. So, Connie, you want to pick up the next thing by Amanda?
Sure. And I do find it interesting. I'm quite sure that Amanda and Bo Colney don't just chat on the phone together. But the prophecy that you just read was on the 22nd about J.D. Vance possibly being a Haman. Well, then Amanda Grace comes out the next day after talking about a prophetic timeline of J.D. and Usha Vance because they announced from the White House that they were expecting their fourth child, which is a boy, and the child is expected to be born in July, which is the seventh month. Now, the Lord revealed something fascinating to her, which she thinks is quite historic because she doesn't think that this has ever happened in the history of the sitting vice president for them to have a baby while in their term. So, the fourth child to be born in July, which is the seventh month, which is also the 250th anniversary of America's birth. So, the fourth child, seventh month, and then you've got Trump being the 47th president. He said that's pretty fascinating how all that's aligned. So I want to read something to you from Luke 21, and I'll explain it later after I read it. It says, "Woe to those women who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for great trouble and anguish will be on the land, and wrath and retribution on the people." So she was very much talking about how this is an innocent baby. You know, the baby's just an innocent person. But to really pray for that child because she felt like that there were potentially um, not so good plans for this baby to be born during this time.
That's
So it's kind of a
interesting.
warning. Mm-hmm.
It is. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
interesting statement. Now, folks, we're just telling you what the prophets are saying
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and letting you form your prayer points and your different opinions from that. Also on 121, Bo Pomey and Dave Scarlett, they're talking about, we've talked over and over again about the financial system. You know, when you create something out of thin air, it's nothing. And that's really true. And that's what it is. Okay, so they took us off of the gold standard. When you look at the charts in the 70s again, I've said this before, and he says he's going to keep harping on what he's talked about, okay? Because we were in 6 zeros. Now at the present moment, we're at 15 zeros. So he's talking about how many zeros are continually added. And, you know, Trump has been speaking up on this from houses, and he's after the housing market right now, and they don't want him to be after the housing market. But basically, how many zeros have been added after we were taken off of the gold standard for the same item to be basically worth the same thing? So this is important, as that is digits that were created out of thin air. You've got to understand that, because in the 70s, if you were a millionaire, you were at the top. Okay, your most homes are 500,000 to millions in the United States now. So they go on to talk about, because now there is nothing stopping it from getting to 120, and he's referring now to silver, because now we're on a breakout, okay? And we've already got it at silver at $108 tonight. And the US dollar since January 2025, silver is up 260%. Okay, and it's outperformed the US dollar 260%. And on this day, he says we're going to see it blow through 100. Is coming this month, and it's already happened. It's through 100.
Right.
Shane, do you have any comment about what Bo is saying here?
Well, other than just to back up exactly what he's saying, you know, point blank, I've been saying that silver's going to hit $125 an ounce by spring. And at this current rate, we're going to do it before spring.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not seeing a slowdown in sight. We already have had info come out just tonight that the Asian markets are expecting $5,110 on gold this week, and that they're in the same publication that they just put out from Singapore. They're expecting $116 on silver this week. So I see it continually going up. I see the drive going up as, you know, you look at it this way, like we talked about last week, the drive up was completely manipulated. But at the same time, God will use whoever he has to in order to fulfill what he needs fulfilled. So while it looks like they manipulated something in order to go against the US, in reality, it's putting us as the US and as America where God wants us and where God has prophetically placed us to be, that when we hit that level, we've entered the new day. So I think what you're going to see is we're going to be pushed, even manipulated to that price in order to weaken the dollar. But all that's doing is just giving Trump the fuel that he needs in order to get us off of the dependency on the Fed and put us exactly where we're supposed to be, where we were before the Federal Reserve, where we, government wise, money wise, and everything, we ran in the black and not in the red. So I'm just kind of curious right now as well. You know, the only other thing that keeps flashing up is the debt clock that keeps climbing. And for the first time in a long time, our debt clock has outran our GDP, our production. So I'm thinking that this is the only thing that we have to look at to see, okay, what are we seeing here and how does this play in to the entire mix? Um, and then in the middle of that, you see all the Democrats complaining about the 2.6% inflation, but yet they didn't complain about the 20% inflation under Biden. They were perfectly happy with that one. But they're complaining about 2.6 under Trump. So I'm seeing an economic snowball being created by gold and silver right now. I'm waiting to see how God is playing. I'm curious to see how God plays his hand in order to shift the US economically. That's what I'm wanting to see. Oh,
And it's just interesting because, this is, in my take is it is part of a wealth transfer that is happening, you know, for
it
those people
seriously
who do
is.
own that.
Yeah. It's just like I'll never forget. I had somebody years ago that I was sitting in front of them face to face, and they had a lot of cash sitting in the bank in a savings account. You know, getting that 0.5% and that 1% interest rate on that savings account, and it was an absolute ton of cash. And I begged them to put every bit of it that they had in gold and just forget about it. It's been sitting in a savings account for 15 years. Just go put it in gold at $900 an ounce. And they actually told me to my face, there's no way gold will ever go up higher than it is now. So I'm telling you that to tell you this, it's that way of thinking that we've been indoctrinated and trained to think and to depend on the system that we currently live under that makes it so hard to understand how there could be a different system, how that system could even function, and what that system would even look like. So, in that same phrase, Satan could have put in fear into people of a completely new system. And I promise you that's part of what's going on right now is trying to instill that fear that what Trump is doing economically and what's happening economically right now is completely crushing our current system. And what do we do without our current system? So it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome. And we're in fear if we don't have the supportive role of our captors. So that's as far as a prophetic insight and prophetic prayer, that's something I feel like needs to be paid attention to is the fear in people and how Satan will use that, even that fear, to try to stop what's going on. Just like we mentioned earlier tonight with ICE. People are in fear because they feel like they've lost some kind of control of some kind of system that Obama put in place, that actually Clinton put in place. Obama reinforced, and then Biden reinforced it that much more. So this whole immigration system that was literally illegal, they've grown to depend on that immigration system, and now when it's being taken away, they're in fear. So all of these leftist lunatics are reacting out of fear. So you have to look at it from that standpoint and understand this economic thing. While yes, it's exciting, it's a lot of stuff going on. I'm seeing a lot of fear in people already of what do we do when we hit this level? What happens to the dollar when we hit that level? Where do we go when we hit this level? And that's where a lot of people need a clear path in order to understand, okay, yes, we see what's going on, but yes, we're also looking at prophetically what God's saying that will happen. And so we want to make sure we want to move according to what the prophets are saying, not what we're seeing.
That's really true. And so I wrote this statement down in response to one of the news articles that we were going over. And bankers say undermining the Fed and the credit card industry could shake confidence in the economy and hurt borrowing cost. And I wrote a big word beside it. I said fear. That's a fear statement to put in the people because it could hurt. No, it could help get us out of debt. And what happens in the mind, okay, in the mind, what people do when their system that they know is being touched. That means, the children of Israel stood on the edge of the promised land and they got in fear. And if you really look at that, because I've been teaching a class on fear, God didn't say, hey guys, you're in fear. He let them do what they chose to do out of fear. He let them walk away from the promised land. He didn't stop and say, you're about to miss the promised land because of your fear. They had three forms of fear. If you read the Bible and look up what in the original language, they had three forms of fear sitting on them when the bad report came. They had dread of what could happen because of what had already happened. They had a fragmented emotions because they had been slaves and that fragmented their emotions. Okay. And then they had trauma from what they had been in slavery on. This is what they're doing to you. And what a person does when they are afraid their system is going to be overturned, they reframe everything. Everything is reframed. And this is what the bankers just did. Instead of telling you the truth that they're holding you bondage under a credit system, they reframed it. If you come against the credit system, if you don't allow the credit system to stand with the high interest, then you can't borrow. Well, most people in Gen X can't own a home right now because of they've reframed it, and we have reframed it because that is a psychological effect of when you are about to lose control, you reframe it so you will stay in bondage. And they know it. They know fear will cause you to reframe everything so you stay in bondage. Man, when I finally realized God could have said at any time, you're in fear. And if you keep on letting this fear and what these 10 spies are telling you, you will never enter the promised land. That's a big deal. And what we're hearing now and what Shane is talking about is just this fear.
Wow.
Anybody else?
That's good.
Well, okay. So let's go over to Amanda Gray. She talks about, she's got a very good prophecy about the storm that we are in the midst of now, but we're able to broadcast. Even though, but she also talks about Trump at Davos, okay? And the world was just put on notice. And this was from 123. And she starts out to say, pray for the safety of President Trump, okay? And we do. Even with what we've just heard about Julie Green's prophecy, we need to take that and pray for his safety. You want no blood on our land. You want nothing to happen to Trump or anyone else on our land. So it is definitely time to pray for his safety, okay? And she starts into several different words that she has given. during different times that has already come to pass, that has proven what she's talking about. And everybody can see I have a visitor over here. So basically, that is what Trump was doing while the world was put on notice. And kind of, if you'll pick that up just a minute, I'll come back.
Okay. She's talking about his speech in Davos was laying down a gauntlet. We've talked about this with respect to Greenland, but what Trump is doing with Greenland is about shipping waterways and control of them, military strategies and protection, and precious minerals. So this is a way deeper as to why he wants Greenland. And then in Genesis 18:24, Abraham negotiated with God concerning Sodom and Gomorrah. If 50 righteous people were found, then God would spare the entire city. And so the book of Genesis contains 50 chapters, and the depth of Noah's ark was 50 cubits. So that was interesting. She's got so many links to all of these prophetic words that she is talking about here. And she also brings up the fact that we're going to have two blood moons again, Purim 2025 and 2026. And she's talking about how it's about reversals. It's about judgments against the UN. It's about shifting global alliances because the world is racing towards the latter events of the book of Revelation. President Trump's proposed Gaza Board of Peace has sparked widespread speculation online, with some claiming it could represent the 10 kings described in Daniel 7 and Revelation 17. And she's making sure that we know that this is not the 10 kings described in Daniel and Revelations, that the 10 kings are the 10 toes of Daniel in chapter 2. She said the 10 kings are the feet of the statue in the dream in Daniel. Again, they're not the 10 advisors, they're not the 10 former leaders or heads of state, and they're not the 10 men sitting around a table in a council. The 10 toes are the 10 kingdoms, the 10 world ruling powers, the 10 fragments that came from a shattered world empire, from a world empire that had catastrophic collapse, fragmented into the earth. These 10 kingdoms will not cleave together or come together politically, spiritually, culturally, and will remain divided and at odds until the return of Christ. So this modern day geopolitical world that we live in was not formed out of a boardroom, a businessman, and a leader that we see today emerged from the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the long fragmented that followed such. I don't know if we need to go into that Ottoman Empire. I don't think I can hear you, Ruth Ann.
I had myself off. I
Okay.
apologize. Okay, what I did is I jotted down some things that I thought we needed to pray about from her prophecy. You can go look up the prophecy and read it, but here's some of the things that take this into consideration. What Trump did is a collision between what God wants to do and what God wants to expose in the global system. Okay, so we saw a collision happen, and it's the beginning of it. And Trump is kind of the wedge between it. He's put himself in places, he's wedging between the two systems. And Davos and the UN are targets of this scrutiny that's going on. And the Europe seems to be the pressure cooker, it's just boiling over and boiling over. But don't put your things that you're getting out here of here yet. It's not time for all of revelations yet. So just hang on and pray. And that's what we need to do. So the first thing you need to do is ask for discernment. And the church needs to wake up. And the church needs to come into discernment. And we need to learn to distinguish from exposure and chaos. What's really chaos and what is God exposing? That would be one of the prayers from what Amanda's talking about. What happened at Davos is we need to pray what is chaos and what is exposure, because we need exposure. God exposed, okay? And he said, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So you also need to pray against assassination plots, sabotage, and misinformation, and that no counsel formed against God's purposes will prosper. So when people are trying to put fear, see, that's what happened to the children of Israel. It was information against God's counsel when it told them we are only grasshoppers in our sight, so we'll be grasshoppers in their sight. This is what they said. This was against God's counsel, but it prospered. And they went into the fear and never got into the promised land. So we need to pray about that. We need to pray that all hidden agreements are exposed, all unrighteous alliances are fractured, okay, and that our citizens awake to what's truly going on. It's time to do that, okay, that we take time to pray about also what's going to happen between these two blood moons and what God's judgment, what he wants judged between the two blood moons. That is huge. So here you are, you're at a time where your prayers are needed. Your prayers are so important, okay? You need to declaim and pray that what God wants for the Middle East cannot be stopped. And we need to look at where we got our information. What's the root of our information about the Middle East? So I can keep going on and on. There's things that we need to look at, but as intercessors, it's time to actually come to the prayer room and do your job for the Lord and bring about exposure. Anybody want to comment?
I think we certainly need discernment regarding this great white wolf.
Definitely. Definitely. And that is another prayer point. We need discernment. And again, sometimes you just need to sit down and say, Lord, what are you saying? Not what I think, but what are you saying? So a wolves can be a protector or they can be a predator. Okay.
Mhm.
And what Julie released and what Bo talked about really calls for discernment. But remember 2 Corinthians 11:14, where it says even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. He can do that. Anybody want to add? Shane, you want to add something? Connie?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Anybody else, or should we? I am waiting for somebody to tell me. So if not, we'll just pull up our offer, Shane, and show what we've got. We have John Ramirez coming to Global Vision Faith Center. He will be here this coming weekend, Friday night and Saturday. If you're anywhere around in Mississippi, look this up. He is really worth it. He's an author. He's written many different books and unlock a new realm of God's glory. So join Global Vision in that. Anything else we've got out there for tonight, Shane? And on February the 2nd, we start a new course on coaching. And this new coaching class is about the Gergashite spirit. We did a lot of research into this spirit, and this all deals with your flesh and how you give in and let your flesh control you. This was the second thing the children of Israel had to face in going into the promised land. This was the second group of giants they had to face. And you can identify when you make flesh-based decisions, or whoever's making flesh-based decisions, because that's what God wanted them to deal with. Break ungodly emotional covenants. I know we don't think about that. And basically establish healthy soul boundaries, restore spiritual traction and forward movement. This is going to be a really phenomenal class, and you can find this on our website at globalvisionfc.com. And we really appreciate all the response we're getting from all of this. So I will say, join us next week. Give us a thumbs up. Post a comment. We love your comments. We like to communicate. We have lots of comments from the live chat tonight. It's been really good. And we'll see you next week on Prophetic Table Talk.
Shalom.